Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. We're presenting part one of a two-part series featuring Harold Smith, retired as Director of Student Programming at Middle Tennessee State University. Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. We're originating today from the basketball court at Murphy Center on the campus of MTSU. And the reason we're at this location, we have as our special guest a longtime friend, Harold Smith, former Director of Student Programming at MTSU.
Yeah.
Retired from the administrative staff and enjoying it, right, Harold?
Very much so, John.
Welcome. You've had a tremendous experience at MTSU doing all the student programming that went on. I just wanted to let you share with us some of the experiences you had. You brought Elvis here 5 times. You brought just about everybody of anybody that was in the entertainment business at that time.
Well, we had a pretty good run as far as major concerts here in Murphy Center. But first and foremost, we had a very good venue. The venue itself is very receptive to the concert environment. Now, when we first started, we didn't have our acoustics squared away that well, but even that got better.
Yeah.
So I used to say I had the very best job in the world.
I think you did.
But for truth be known, I was lucky in that I was at the right place at the right time.
Well, it was a great experience, and you brought a lot of great names. This was before Bridgestone Arena was built in Nashville, wasn't it?
That's correct.
So we had the venue that everybody wanted to be in.
We did. The old venue in Nashville, Municipal Auditorium, was in existence then. And later on, in the mid-'80s, I guess it was, Starwood, if you recall, the amphitheater, came on the scene as far as a concert venue. So if we had competitors at that time, that's who it was.
That'd be who it was. Of all the people, all the acts, all the entertainers you brought into Murphy Center, what was the most memorable event that you had?
John Denver was probably one of the easiest shows to work.
Okay.
I remember that, and I also remember this. John Denver produced a crowd here that will never be surpassed in Murphy Center. He played on a little 6x6 stage in the center, so we had chairs completely surrounding him on the floor, which was very unusual for a concert setup. Plus, fire laws have changed some since then. I think we had 12,477 paid customers for the John Denver show, and that was way back in '78, April of '78.
All right. Tell us about the Elvis shows. 2 times here 1 year and 3 times the next year, I guess.
Yeah.
How was it to deal with Elvis, the great entertainer that he was?
John, it was easy for me to understand why you never saw Elvis on Johnny Carson, because Elvis Presley was too nice a person. Johnny Carson would have probably eaten his lunch. So I'm sure the Colonel had a lot to do and say about that, but that's what I remember most about him off stage.
Okay.
Now, when his band struck up 2001 A Space Odyssey theme and he took the stage, he was a different person entirely.
I can imagine. I can believe that, yes. How was it dealing with Colonel Tom Parker, his manager?
Oh, I have to laugh about it because I've never dealt with anybody like that in my life. I think Colonel Tom saw life as a game. He played hard. He played to win, but it was a game. And I don't really understand how Elvis and he matched up the way they did. Colonel used to be Eddie Arnold's manager. He managed Eddie Arnold for a while. He's a very shrewd guy. He's very smooth. When he flew in here to front this show for the first time, he took one look at the facility and he said, "All of those are pull-out bleachers." And I said, "Yes, sir, they are." He said, "Well, where do you put your follow spots?" And I showed him. He said, "Well, for Elvis, we're going to put them in the corners of," and he pointed out the sections he wanted them in the corners of. He says, "Now we've just saved 206 tickets." Well, he was standing right there when he said it. And I thought, well, he's crazy. But I got back to the office, the man was right. He knew exactly what he was doing. And he played strange, funny little games. I picked him up at the airport. He and the two promoters that were with him, Tom Hewlett from Concerts West in Seattle,
Okay.
Jerry Weintraub,
Okay.
Management 3 in New York, were there. And he insisted on a limousine.
I'm sure.
So when they got in, Colonel is sitting in the middle, Jerry's on one side, Tom's on the other side. And we're off. I'm sitting in the jump seat facing them with the security guy, a guy named Charlie Stone. And he says, I want to go through Madison. Well, he had a home in Madison. I knew that, and I thought maybe that might be where he was going to go. So we headed down to Madison, the driver. And about halfway down with this one street area, he says, at this bank, turn left and go through the drive-through.
Yeah.
I thought, well, he's going to do some banking, you know. So he did that, and we pulled up, and as we pulled up, there's this gentleman standing out there with a three-piece suit on. And we pulled up to him. Colonel raises, lowers the window. The gentleman reaches in his coat, hands him an envelope. The colonel takes it, puts it in his pocket, leaves. Well, I know my eyes were buggy at that point. And both promoters were sitting there. Not a word was said for miles.
Okay.
And finally, Colonel Parker turned to Tom, says, could you do that in Seattle? Jerry, could you do that in New York? That's the kind of games the colonel played.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, yeah. As I recall, the colonel would make reservations at several motels when they came in, as people would be trying to find Elvis and see Elvis. Was that true?
I don't know. I'd never heard that. I'd never heard.
That's a story I've heard and remembered it over the years.
In Murfreesboro, we didn't have that many hotels
that's
and motels
true.
to put people in. The crew stayed at Ramada. Elvis never stayed with the crew.
Okay.
He never stayed with the crew. As a matter of fact, and I can't recall the gentleman that had the recording studio out on
Salem Road.
Salem Road.
Yes.
Elvis stayed there all night the first year he played
did he?
here.
Okay.
And they spent all night recording, is what I was told. The other nights, the three nights that he played the second year, he flew back to Memphis.
Every night?
Yeah.
My word. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me how Colonel Parker was paid.
The colonel wanted $100 bills.
Okay.
Now, he wouldn't take a check.
Okay.
He said, I've got to have it in cash. And so the shows each grossed well over 100,000, but then, my gosh, in that day and time, tickets were $10, $15.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, this day and time they're 150. But
Right.
so we had the colonel's money. The only problem I was afraid of was we would be midnight getting out of here because he had, at final settlement, would want to count it all.
Oh, yeah.
So we had it in a big suitcase, and it was in the green room back there. He said, meet me in the green room when the Sweet Inspirations, which was the opening female act, took the stage. He said, meet me in the green room. So I met in the green room. Opened up the suitcase. He picked up a batch of them, thumbed them, put them back in, closed the suitcase, and left. And as he started out the door, I said, well, I wished I'd known that. I'd have taken me 4 or 5 of those before you got. He turned around and says, I know where you live. So, that's how he was paid. I tricked him, though, John. I tricked him the first year. The deal that we had with him was that we would get a certain amount of money flat on the show.
Okay.
And, of course, they got everything else. And hell, he sold out in, well, 2 days, but he did it all by mail.
Okay.
And Sound 70, Quick Tick, handled all that mail for us. I knew as quick as he said mail, there's no way that I've got the capacity to handle that.
Sure.
I mean, can you imagine that coming through the MTSU post office here? So we had them handle it. But after it was over, we kept it. We deposited it, and the interest on that money we kept.
Okay.
And I paid the colonel that first year, and I said, "Well, we've still got the interest was ours." He turned to me and said, Said that was interest on the show. Said that's. I said, "No, it's not part of the agreement."
Mm.
So the next year, it was in the agreement that
I'm sure it was.
that he was to keep the money. But I couldn't believe that in all of the experience that the man had had and all the years in the music business and concert promotion and what have you, that he would have overlooked such a thing.
Yeah.
Because Presley's going to sell out in a matter of hours.
Oh, yeah, sure. Mm.
So because of that little fact, I got to join or become a member of Colonel Tom Parker's, what did he call it? The Snowman's League.
Okay.
So I felt very honored about that.
Sure. Let's talk about Bob Hope. I guess he's the #1 act you have on that list of all that came in here.
Yeah.
Over those years, how many acts did you bring in? Shows, events?
Around 160s,
Okay.
160
All right.
some odd.
All right, I understand.
And they were everything from the Lipizzan Stallions to World Wrestling. We did them all. Well, you know.
I know you did. Tell about Hope, about Bob Hope.
Well, Hope, you could probably tell me more about Hope than I could tell you, because you were with him much more than I was that day.
That was a great experience in my life, to be able to be with him and to meet him and get to know him a little bit.
Yeah.
Interesting fellow.
Oh yeah, very.
We picked him up at the airport in Nashville, and he did a press conference there at the airport before he came back. On the way back to Murfreesboro, we saw a sign for Stuckey's, I believe it was. And whatever they had on the billboard, he said, "Oh, I'd like that." And it was fried chicken or what it was, but anyway, I said, "You want that?" So when we got back to town, I called George Frey, who had the Saddle Restaurant at the Jackson Motel, and he wanted to come down and have dinner. Because George said, "I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that," but then eventually he did. Some of his favorite items and everything. Of course, we brought him into the back room of the Saddle Restaurant to be private and enjoy the dinner. And of course, no one would leave up front. So George couldn't turn the tables over, so he like had a fit because he couldn't get the restaurant emptied. But anyway, Bob Hope ate there. And we had our show here at Murphy Center. It was a memorable occasion. Bob Hope was opened by Mary Travers of Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
And the previous night, they had been at Eastern Kentucky, and Mary went off on the anti-war stuff. And so he let it be known she wasn't going to do that here, or she was gone. Yeah. But anyway, quite a show. We had a tremendous crowd, and he was quite an entertainer.
Oh, he got out here with a country ham too, didn't he, from here?
He may have. I've forgotten that one. Yeah, okay. Some of the other memorable acts that you had in here, Harold, that stand out in your recollection?
Well, what would stand out in most people's minds, John, does not stand out necessarily in mine as far as concerts concerned, because I was completely enthralled and paid attention to the production of the show itself.
I'm sure.
I mean, from load in to set up to load out. As an example, we played a group called U2 here. Their equipment that we flew from the ceiling of Murphy Center weighed 66,000 pounds.
Good night.
Well, we had to call, Bill Smotherman ran Murphy Center and ran it with an iron fist, I might say. He was one heck of a guy to work with. I really loved working with Bill Smotherman. We brought in a stress engineer just to see to what point this building would be stressed. And we were told, after he did a thorough investigation of the area that we would be hanging the equipment from, that the building on a dead drop being straight down, your point up here, straight down to the floor, would pick up the weight of the building. You didn't have to worry about it. It was anything that was bridled in. Now that meant you've got a point that you want here, but your nearest point is here and here to hang. So you've now got to run here and down.
Okay.
So you've got a side pull on that. And we couldn't put more than 3,200 pounds on any bridle that we had for them. But 66,000 pounds. And it rained all day that day. And we've got a flat roof, so I was on the roof up and down all day just to make sure that water wasn't standing and the weight of that would be a problem. So when you say what groups did I enjoy, very few did I see.
I see what you mean.
Most of the time we were tied up with things other than the show itself. I guess I got to see more of the Denver show that I talked to you about. We incidentally that was his birthday. He was here on his birthday, and we took, you remember the old iron skillet in town?
Oh, yes,
We took him there after the show, and as you had done for Hope, we had it pretty well cleared. It was late, and he thoroughly enjoyed that.
If you had it to do all over again, would you be wanting to get involved again? Maybe that's not a fair question.
Well, it is if you let me eliminate about 3 or 4 or 5 acts that we had to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some problems with some of the groups, but by and large, the most of the part was, for the most part, they were fantastic. I remember the night that I knew that Murphy Center had passed the test, and it was the night that we played Charlie Daniels in the volunteer jam. We did the volunteer jam here. And I was in the lighting booth back behind us and up to the top when Charlie broke into the Orange Blossom Special on that fiddle. Well, this place went absolutely nuts.
Is that right?
From up there, I could feel it shake. And I thought after that was over, I said, well, I think we can probably do anything. I think Murphy Center has passed the test.
What was the most unusual act that you brought in here that was so different from anything else?
We brought in some rock. Now again, that's going to require personal evaluation on my part.
Sure.
We brought in a lot of rock groups that were difficult to work with, but they were very, very popular. One of the ones that I'm thinking about is a group called 9 Inch Nails.
I remember them.
So do I. They were extremely difficult to work with. They absolutely trashed our dressing room. I mean, trashed it. And I wouldn't let them leave. Their bus was parked out back. I wouldn't let them leave until they made financial restitution of the damage that they caused in our building. I was going to have them arrested. So that was one. There were several others that the crowd got extremely unruly.
Okay.
And I don't mean in a negative kind of way. It was in a happy kind of way. A group called Pearl Jam played here. And wow, the audience, I couldn't believe the audience. They were picking people up on the very back and passing them forward all the way down to behind the barricade that night, and there's no way to get in there to stop that. That was the first time, and well, it was the only time I ever saw the wave, as they called it, in that day and time. So that was one time that the audience kind of got me a little unnervy.
Okay.
And there have been several others, but most of which I've forgotten.
You mentioned earlier about a line around the Murphy Center lined up to get tickets. That was before the days of automation, I guess.
That's correct, yeah, and it's for a group called Journey. Now, I didn't see the show, but I got to hear a lot of the show.
Okay.
And that was one super show.
Okay.
It was, and they were a very, very popular group, and it was understandable why. They lost their lead singer, Steve Perry, I believe was his name, and when that happened, the groups still hung in there together, but they never were the same same Journey.
I understand. Okay.
That was a hard ticket sale, and well, a hard ticket as opposed to computerized tickets. And the line for tickets for that show wrapped completely around the upper part of Murphy Center. It sure did.
What was the largest crowd you had for any act over the years?
The largest crowd was for John Denver.
Okay.
And that's when John played on the small stage in the center. And
Yeah.
we put the seating configuration around the stage in such a way that we picked up a lot of seats that we normally wouldn't in a concert setting. Plus, fire regulations
Yes.
have changed a great deal since then. So that was 12,477 people that attended that show. There'll never be more than that in Murphy Center.
I can imagine, yeah, I can imagine. Other memorable experiences, other acts that you recall particularly for anything unusual or outstanding or more memorable than others?
Well, production again is what my main
Sure.
thing was. And we did a group in which at some point during the show, the drummer was physically picked up, turned upside down, and rolled on a rail all the way across the top of the audience, around, back down, and back. Group, Motley Crue. Motley Crue. And that worried me to death. I didn't, I was not easy at all until that particular thing got done. Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah, sure.
I've got to remember Garth Brooks.
Okay.
Garth Brooks was a fantastic show. Garth Brooks was a fantastic person. He was doing specials. He wanted his audience, his TV audience, to understand that he knew how to do every single thing that there was to do about concerts. At one venue, he'd sell tickets. At another venue, he would usher. At another venue, he would do the soundboard, and the lighting board.
Yeah.
At here, he set lights. He crawled to the top of the venue and was actually setting the lights with our riggers. He, of course, was up there with our riggers. He was quite a character, and I would say the audience was as enthusiastic about Garth Brooks as they were almost about it as Elvis Presley. A story about Elvis that's hard to believe, but I know what happened. The last year, he played 3 shows here. The second and third show, as I recall, were back to back. The first show, there was like a 4 or 5 day break between shows. Well, when he came in for that show, he didn't look good to me. And I asked Charlie Sohn. He said he'd been under the sun lamp all day today, so didn't think anything about it. He came out here, absolutely killed the audience as he would.
Sure.
Walks off and collapses backstage. And Sonny West and Red West and Joe Esposito pick him up, throw him in the limousine, and drive out of here. Well, I was standing back there with Bill Smotherman, and we said, we don't say a word to anybody about this until we hear it from some other source. We never did hear it from any other source. 3 days later, he walked through and
did it again.
Came in here and killed them again. So.
Harold, did you have Kenny and Dolly at one time?
Oh, yes. That's a show that I would like to forget. Some things I can't tell. And some things are scary, because the Kenny and Dolly, we got a bomb scare on the Kenny and Dolly show. Yeah, came in on the phone in the green room, which was unusual because that phone I had installed the day of the concert. Very few people knew what that phone number was. So from the get-go, we felt like it was an inside job. But somebody had been following Dolly and had threatened her on occasion. Mm-hmm. So here we are. The road manager for Kenny picked up the phone and answered it. And the gentleman just simply said, well, in 40 minutes, there's a bomb that will explode in Murphy Center. Well, you know, what he said to him says, well, if you won't tell anybody, I won't. And he hung up. Well, of course, we immediately got all of security together.
Sure.
We before we even opened the doors, we completely cleared the house as far as we, through every restroom, under everything, looking for, you know, for that kind of thing. So we knew it had to have happened if there indeed was something after the doors were open, and it was very, very limited place that it couldn't have been under the bleachers. We had security there. So we thought restroom, and found nothing. But we didn't. But the security is the one that made the decision.
Sure.
Not to clear the building.
Okay.
And it was 12,000 plus people in here. I mean, it would have been a fiasco.
It turned out everything was fine. Okay.
Was fine.
Harold, this has been interesting and delightful. Thank you so much.
Well,
to
John,
reflect upon those years as director of student program.
It's been a long time. A lot of things we forget, but a lot of things we remember. And I thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, congratulations to you on a great career. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed having Harold Smith, former director of student programming at Middle Tennessee State University, reflecting upon his years in bringing all the great acts into Murphy Center.